A little addendum before I start this video. So in a couple of seconds, you're going to hear me say, in the interest of no spoilers, I've kept the footage to the first third of my journey in the game, mixed in with Kojima-approved pre-release footage so that I know there's no spoilers at all. However, once I sat down to make this video, and by make I mean edit, I realized that my hours and hours and hours of gameplay footage was all corrupted thanks to a faulty capture card. So this may work out for the best. Now, you can guarantee there are no spoilers in this video because all the gameplay will be pre-release Kojima-approved gameplay. I will be replacing that capture card again the day this video goes up. So by the time I record my follow-up videos of this, which you'll hear more about soon, I'll be able to be much more specific with the footage. Oh boy. A lot of people are going to hate Death Stranding, but I'm going to say something here that may sound a bit strange. I think that a lot of that isn't necessarily the fault of the game. A good bit of that is the fault of the surrounding conversation. This is a tough game to cover, so let me let you know from the jump what you're going to get here. All gameplay will be either from the first third or so of my journey with the game, or literally pre-released and approved footage. That way I avoid any and all spoiler territory. With that being said, I'm going to, like my last Death Stranding video, let the gameplay speak and leave the precision editing behind for this video, mostly because I think with this game, as I said last time, that's so important. I'm seeing a lot of people being incredibly sensitive about spoilers. Even Sony was very specific about what they wanted pre-release reviews to show. Ziplines, for example, were a no-no apparently. So that's what you're going to get here. It's safe. But this isn't so much a review as it is a direct response to some of the criticism levied at the game. It isn't meant to cover every facet of the game, instead I want to pinpoint a few things. I'm not a Kojima fanboy, I'm not here to defend Death Stranding. I like Metal Gear, and I think he's an extremely passionate artist, but not one of his games make my top 25 of all time. I'm also a PC first guy. I love my PS4, but I also love my Xbox. My point here is that I'm going to be as objective as I can. Again, I'm not here to defend the game as much as I'm here to clarify what it really is. Whether you're going to love it, or, well, I think before we get to some controversial good, it's important to talk about what may, ironically, be Death Stranding's biggest problem. Death Stranding has the worst introduction, the worst opening to any game I have ever played, and it's a shame, because once the game opens up around 9 to 11 hours in, things get dramatically better. I recently went back and replayed Red Dead Redemption 2, and I made a video about it, and one thing I thought was great about the game, and still do, was its long, meditative opening that led to a Fallout-like introduction into the real open world the game had to proffer players. It was a way to introduce you to the game's mechanics, introduce you to its characters, its world, without thrusting upon you so much sensory overload that a lot of that gets lost. Death Stranding takes the same approach, but it leaves behind the accompanying success. The first almost dozen hours of Death Stranding are, in no kinder terms, a slog. They are, at least in my opinion, unbearably slow, achingly uneventful, and most frustratingly, not representative of what the game has to offer both mechanically and challenge-wise throughout the majority of its runtime. For the first 10 or so hours, you'll be doing almost nothing but watching and walking. Watching and walking, and while, yes, there's more watching and walking, this is, indeed, a lot of what the rest of the game is. But this is also the worst of those realities. I'll get into the specifics of those in a minute, but in an attempt to create a feeling of exploration and organic discovery, both in the world and its characters, the game forgets to engage you consistently from the jump. And the problem with this is it creates such a bad first impression that no matter how great the rest of the game can be, too many people will either give up or use these 10 or so hours as a metric by which they'll judge the rest of the game. In a sense, these hours create and condition a bias in players. The game is working from behind from there, trying to dig itself out of a hole instead of working from a place of excitement, or at least level ground. My best advice is to try to push through. The game is better than its intro makes you believe. There is value far greater that I think is worth finding in a lot of ways. However, no one should shame you at all for not liking those first few hours. So let's talk about what you'll be doing in Death Stranding 80% of the time. I don't know where the term or genre of walking simulator develops such a negative connotation. There is so much good in that genre. Games like Firewatch, Gone Home, Edith Finch, but I digress, because what Death Stranding is not the walking simulator everyone is writing it off as. It is, however, not a walking simulator. It's the evolution of walking. Let me clarify. With walking simulators, the walking is not the attraction. It isn't a mechanic per se, it is simply your vehicle. It requires no thought, it's a nearly passive element used to serve up a narrative. Death Stranding is the polar opposite. It is a game where walking is the game. For me, I thought this created a relaxing, almost zen-like set of mechanics that provided me with a novel approach to exploration, even in places where some people are saying they get frustrated. As what is essentially a courier, you're carrying around a backpack full of interactable and unilaterally existing items, meaning they can each fall individually, take damage, and be dropped. Walking, then, becomes a bit of a dance. Ever played those iPhone games where you have to tilt your phone as ice cream scoops or blocks fall from the sky and the goal is to stack as many as possible without dropping the whole tower? Yep, that's kind of what this is. You'll use the triggers and sticks to keep yourself and your product upright. If you do not, you'll fall. Your items will take damage and your post-mission grade will suffer. For me, this was kind of cool. Rocks and obstacles are everywhere, all of which, of any size by the way, can send you tumbling, and the world is constantly challenging you until you hop into vehicles, in a litany of ways. I like this. When facing your ghostly foes, it'll be slowly walking that will keep you safe and free of their grasp. When that aging rain starts pelting your metallic cargo, it's walking faster that will keep your grade high. This admittedly is the primary journey you're on here. What I will say is that if you accept and understand that combat, which I'm actually going to save for its own video because I think there's some strange and novel stuff here. But if you accept that combat is a supplementary focus of a game that's much more concerned with passivity and community, then it's easier to accept your journey for what it is. Combat is not even close to the star of the show here. And sure, it's more prominent later in the game, but it still absolutely is not the goal. That's all not to say that I don't understand the people that hate this walking simulator. It's certainly not something that I could see everyone having fun with. But while so many games are saying it's a stressful trek through tall grass, I'm here to say that I'm someone that actually found it strangely soothing. And I hear a lot of people saying the game's great, but it's not really fun. And it's arduous, and there's not a lot of fun to be had. I guess I'm playing it differently, because I had a strange bit of fun. But I'll be honest, if you've seen the gameplay footage of world traversal on foot, you've seen just about what you're going to get for the most part. And yes, the game eventually turns walking into an RPG mechanic with upgrades and gear, but it is still just walking. But now, I want to talk about something I'm seeing more than anything else, that the game doesn't respect the player's time. I don't disagree, but I think context is needed. A Twitter follower pointed me to a section of IGN's review of Death Stranding. I'm going to let that section play real quick.
You really need to work incredibly hard to enjoy a lot of it, because so much of Death Stranding feels convoluted and requires far more effort than it has any right to. Take the fast travel system. Let's say that you're here and you want to teleport to here. Well, first you need to walk all the way to here. Okay, let's speed this up a bit. Then you have to hold a button to enter Sam's private room. Now, there is a cutscene, but don't worry, you can skip it. In order to sit through a second cutscene, but don't worry, because you can skip this too. And finally, wait, I forgot about this one. And finally, you can pan the camera around to find the special teleporting umbrella, which Sam is forced to keep hung on the wall of his private room instead of, oh, I don't know, carrying it on his back? It's just a thought.
I do not entirely agree with IGN's review of the game, and quite frankly, it's relatively rare that I visit the site. Not for any other reason than it's never been a place I've gotten my news or reviews from. But this section of this particular review did leave me a tad frustrated. Not because he's wrong, he's not. That really is a process, but instead, because there's a reason this process exists. Death Stranding is a giant allegory for the way that modern society treats gratification. And in its like-based social media systems, the game is direct commentary on how we choose to deliver that gratification. Everything in Death Stranding is there to force you to reevaluate that immediacy. Sure, it'd be easy for me to use a ladder that someone else left and move on, but it feels off. Instead, my gratification comes from the likes I get when I go out of my way to leave help for someone else in the game. Yes, fast traveling is arduous, but that's because it feels less like something the game wants you to use as a crutch, and more like something you'll use sparingly in your journey to help others, to be helped, and thus it used those moments, and these moments of fast traveling, for example, to slow the journey down and give you and Sam a chance to reconnect with what's happening around you, to ground your journey a bit. I understand the complaints of time wasting, but I've yet to feel as though Death Stranding has placed in front of me something entirely superfluous. I've yet to feel that sinking feeling that something's only here to pad playtime or the world. A feeling I get far too often in modern AAA games. You are traveling across the United States through hazards and hills to bring a disconnected world back together, and you're doing it in isolation, and I think the overarching pace of the game, as slow as it can be, is meant to further that isolation. After all, it's the reason your journey is a necessity in the first place. The game is built around slow moments that lead to dramatic rewards. Those rewards become significantly less impactful the quicker you can accomplish them. So yes, the game is slow. Yes, it's sometimes shockingly plotting, but there's a reason for it. It doesn't feel like an unintentional design decision. That doesn't mean you have to like it, and it certainly doesn't make it objectively good. It's just to say that it feels disingenuous to insinuate the game is actively attempting to waste your time, or that the designers were too obtuse to realize they were doing it. But this brings me to the strangest part of this game, and again, no spoilers. I'm sure you've already seen this. This is Monster Energy product placement in Death Stranding. This is product placement for an AMC show I've never heard of, at least I think it's an AMC show based on this. At first, I tried to give the game and Kojima more credit than they probably deserved for this. Maybe this is a sly commentary on modern consumerism, maybe he's making a statement at the expense of unknowing sponsors about the futility of their fleeting capitalistic endeavors. And I quickly realized, nope, it's just kind of product placement. That's it. Kojima's just a weird dude. That's all there is to it. I mean, maybe you found messaging that I missed, but I really don't think it's here. The point I'm making is that there is a lot of crap in Death Stranding that does seem indulgent. Not time-wasting, just indulgent. Things that are totally optional. Things that aren't necessarily connected to gameplay, that seem like they serve no function other than to be momentary bits of humor or cuteness. Or sometimes an overly realistic touch in an entirely fantasy-driven package. Yet as strange as these things can be, as convoluted as the mass exposition dumps the game feeds you can be, I think what's underneath the game's story is actually kind of special. To Kojima and his team's credit, this is a significantly less confused and messy tale at its core than, say, The Phantom Pain, which, quite frankly, without years of Metal Gear context, is an absolute narrative nightmare. Here, while still strange, you have a story that's really positive. Yes, there's an awesome looking villain. Yes, there are characters named after Jeopardy answers for things related to mail. And yes, the delivery of the narrative is at times lacking. But, man, for as dreary as the game's marketing and pre-release press made it out to be, the light this game wants so badly to shine is so bright. Sam is a ghost-seeing specialist that needs to connect the country, and everyone you meet is overwhelmingly positive about that very thing. Mission results are seas of point-pouring and reinforcing indulgence. You're carrying around a cute baby to keep darkness away. Killing is an avoidable reality. Your largest foes are literal embodiments of darkness that you snuff out with bright, colorful explosions. And the entire game is built around support from strangers and the support you can offer them. The online element of this game may not be as revolutionary as it was marketed as. It's really just a beefed up and more tangible version of Dark Souls' player tip system, but it makes you feel like you're a part of something, and it makes you feel like you should be helping too. And this so perfectly supports the tone of the narrative and the story's characters. This feels in a lot of ways like the polar opposite of a Metal Gear game. Characters smile a lot, they can be happy, they make jokes, they fast travel with a Mary Poppins style umbrella. I don't want to divulge too much more about the narrative, but what I will say is that I've never seen a game more mismarketed, and maybe intentionally, than this. If you're avoiding the game or unsure because of its dreary tone, I assure you it's far less dreary than it appears. And I mean that even once you jump into it. There's an aura of darkness that rests over everything you do in Death Stranding, but it's only there to give you a reason to engage with all that light underneath. Skill Up wasn't at all wrong when he said that Death Stranding is not for everyone. I feel like that platitude could be applied to any piece of media, but I feel like it's especially true here. There really is nothing else like Death Stranding, for better and for worse. But what I do believe will befall this game is a lack of sales, unfortunately, in players, simply due to a misunderstanding of what it is. I think far too many people have far too wide of a range of expectations for a game that, quite frankly, is designed from the ground up to subvert each and every last one of them. It was marketed as this dark, plotting action-adventure game and even shown off in demos as such, when in reality it's a cloud-covered dose of positivity that wants you to talk instead of fight more often than not. I like Death Stranding. I'm honestly unsure whether or not that's a hot take, but it's mine. But I'm also not going to sit here and pretend that it's a great game. I think it's a really good experience, but I struggle with calling it a game more often than I thought I would. Every time it starts to feel like one, every time it begins to engage me in ways I recognize, it strips those moments away and leaves me with something unrecognizable all over again. And for me, this was exciting, and at other times, honestly, it was frustrating. But it was new, and it was novel, and even in its slower moments, it was interesting. What I won't do is pretend that it's easy to find that intrigue. Death Stranding really challenges you to actively meet it halfway, to engage with it far more proactively than most games, to meet it in the middle. And what that creates is the ultimate opinion paradox. Love it or hate it, you're not wrong. So quick addendum here, I am going to make another follow-up Death Stranding video. That'll come once I feel like I've done and seen everything that I want to see in the game, but also importantly, it'll come once I've been able to recapture all the footage I originally wanted to use in the first place. It actually ended up taking me much longer to make this video without my footage than it did with it, so here we are. But I do want to cover in a more in-depth video two of the game's more interesting suites of mechanics in its combats and in its inventory system. Its inventory system is much more frustrating than anything else I think I've played in a long time. I think it's the perfect embodiment of everything right and wrong with the game. So that'll come soon, but as always, I want to know what you guys think. Does this seem like something you want to play? I mean, the people calling it a FedEx simulator, they're not wrong. It's really just a bunch of fetch quests, but it's at least trying to make that into something a bit more unique. Does that sound good to you? Are you going to be picking it up? Do you have any interest in playing it at all? And I think my most important question is this the game you expected Kojima to make? Let me know down in the comments below the answers to any of those questions. Let's have a real conversation. As always, if you enjoyed this video, press the like button. If you have not yet done so, also press subscribe. That way you don't miss anything I put out on this channel. Also, as always, the little gray bell next to the subscribe button. All it does when you press it is make sure you're actually notified when I put up videos. So if you press that little bell next to the subscribe button, that'll make sure you actually see my videos when they come out, which is super important for me and you. And until next time, guys, I'm out.